1, 2, 3, 4.
In game design, there's a veil. There's a veil that covers up how games are made, the process of how they're made, the type of routes you can take, what type of jobs are available, and really how to get into the. And they do this like with any industry. The movie industry does this too, where there's a veil because this is a very fun industry, and these jobs that are very competitive, and they not want to take because they're fun jobs to have. So, in this week's episode of It's Not a Sport, episode 19, we're going to be talking about how kind of peek behind the veil and some of the resources I use. Quick reminder, as always, make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. This week's episode and the coming formats for the rest of this season are going to be a little bit different. We're not going to do the news as we always do because the news really has been going on rapidly fast and I haven't been up with it over the hiatus. And we are also just going to cover esports in this episode because esports is basically over at the moment and it is off season. With further ado, let's get into this week's podcast episode talk, which is what is it like peeking behind the veil. So I think a very good resource for peeking behind the game design veil is GDC. If you get a chance to go to GDC, which happens next year in March 21st to 25th of 2022 in San Francisco, I would recommend going. I want to go to this conference. What this conference is that if E3 is the big game design trade show where a lot of the business people and a lot of the marketing people go to show off what they have, what their products are for the coming future, GDC, which stands for Game Developers Conference, is the actual making of it. It is where all the developers go and they talk about what they've learned making the games and what they've done to make the games. It is where all the artists are. It is where all the game designers are, the system designers are, the coders are, the animators are. This is basically the where we come around and where they talk about what it's like to actually make games. And in these talks, you can actually learn a lot. They are basically like TED Talks, and you can learn a lot about how certain systems are made in some of your favorite games. And where do I recommend you find these resources if you can't attend the conference? Well, YouTube, of course. In YouTube, they have a GDC YouTube page, and they have hour-long talks, just TED Talks, about very, very, very in-depth topics or very entry-level topics to a lot of different things. As you can see just from their page alone, we have Ghost of Tsushima, lethality and combat balance on how they balance combat in that game. They have The Last of Us crafting an interactive guitar on how they made the guitar in The Last of Us game, if you haven't played that in The Last of Us 2. They have things like Star Wars Galaxies, classic post-mortem, getting the most out of an entry-level game design job. All these certain talks are out there. Death Stranding AI post-mortem, God of War combat for a new perspective, how they did that. Untitled Goose Game, digital location scouting, just how they did that. Hades dialogue, which was one of my favorite ones, and how they did that. All the dialogue in Hades and the storytelling within Hades. Cinematic process behind God of War and how they animated all those cutscenes in God of War and what was their goals and who did that and who are the people behind that get to talk and say how they did it. So this is definitely a resource I recommend you guys check out if you're interested in game design, if you're interested in improving your game design process. I have definitely checked these out and they have helped me tremendously. Overall, GDC is a resource that must be abused in this time of age because of how hard it is to see behind the veil. You will not be able to understand a lot of game studios' work processes just looking at game studios regularly. It's just like in movies. They don't tell you how really movies are actually made. What is the hardships? What's the process? What is the deadlines, the milestones, step-by-step process of how this team tackled this one problem, or how this team achieved this one shot, or how costume design had to interact with the costume to fit the actor's needs, or how the actor had to really work to get this line or get into this role, or how lighting had to be affected for makeup. Just things like that you never get to learn within movies, and it's the same within game design. You don't get to learn how these shots or how they were animated, how the sound or the dialogue was implemented, how this system was coded into the game, how this level was designed for the player, the highs and the lows, what we learned from it. And those are things that I think we as a community, we as game developers need to talk about more, because they really up our game. Right now, we are very focused on the business aspect of it, how bad business is, how hard business is with a game design, and how marketing is. With the most recent Halo's Battle Pass, for an example. But we don't get to talk about what technology aspects or what big fronts Halo Infinite has made compared to Halos. Like the example of how the guns sound amazing in Halo, or how they look, how they're animated, things like that. You don't learn that. Take it from me, going to game design school, don't really learn that much about those things, on how guns will be animated or things like that in game design school. You get to see a peek again behind the veil for a split second, but consistently looking behind the veil, especially when you're not in the industry, is extremely difficult. Anyway, now that you have GDC, they also talk about some Spider-Mans, and generally a lot of PlayStation games will come talk about their experiences over the next uh year after the game's release. Some of my GDC talks, some of my favorites have been the God of War ones, have been the Hades ones, have been how they implemented the Ghost of Tsushima score into the game. The principle of level design is a good one, and there's a lot of technical things that you can dive into within these um, talks. And they get very, very technical. They reference books and better materials, and the people there you can definitely reach out to, and the questions there are very well formatted. It's definitely a resource that I recommend you guys check out. Another resource that I think should be checked out is this website used to be called Game of Sutra. Now it's called Gamedevcom, and they talk about a lot of the news within game design. Like for recent news, Tencent is suspended from launching apps or launching new apps in China, with the new China breakdown of the tech industry and how the government's cracking down on that. Or for example, right now, Mass Effect, Amazon Studios is developing a Mass Effect television show. Just things like that. Or former Sony IT workers sues for gender discrimination. So if you want to get another kind of in-depth, probably the best source of gamer news within the industry, well, here we go. Game of Sutra, or GameDeveloper.com as it is known now, is probably the best resource for that, where you get to see developer talks and developer articles, and how what's going on, who's leaving, the moves within the industry, how some of these games are made, some of the big moves. The latest jobs are even on here, on just like what jobs are going on and what type of independent games and blog posts are happening. So there is a lot of stuff on here. A lot of game developers write on this site as well, and it is probably a very great section. You can sort it by discipline, or you can do it by programming. So programmers they'll talk about how, Rockstar's quest for the ultimate video game horse, maybe how they program the horse in Red Dead Redemption 2, things like that. And those are things to get a peek behind the veil. Post-mortem AI action planning for Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Immortal Phoenix Rising, how they program the AI. And there's some really cool articles and things you can learn from these posts. With that further ado, I really hope you enjoyed this week's talk of game design behind the veil. We are now going to transition into esports for the coming year. I really hope you enjoyed the talk, right? I know we've been going on hiatus. Future of It's Not a Sport is coming up. We're going to talk about that in the next coming episodes. Anyway, let's get into esports now. let's get into esports, all the esports news. Quick reminder, as always, make sure to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Really helps me out. If you want to listen to all of our past podcast shows, those are all archived on the YouTube channel, or the most recent ones are on our Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud and Google Podcasts. So definitely check those out as well. On our website, we're going to have some cool merch coming up. We're also going to have articles up on there that you can read. And, of course, the game of our capstone game that I'm working on now, Run and Gun. You can play the beta right now and download that if you have a Windows. So, let's get into esports. Starting with Overwatch League, we're just going to skip all the fluff and go to the grand finals. Who won the grand finals in Overwatch League? Well, it was Atlanta versus Shanghai Dragons, and Shanghai Dragons 4-0'd Atlanta. So congratulations, Shanghai Dragons, for winning the Overwatch Championship. They actually have, funny enough, we're not going to go over all of this because it is a lot, but they have a player tracker on the website. I don't understand why League doesn't have this. Overwatch has a player tracker where you can track the player moves on where they are moving, where they are signing, because there have been a lot of roster changes and where your favorite players are on what team now. So definitely check this one out if you haven't already. They did a lot of roster moves just from my peeking with the Overwatch League, but here it all is if you want to know what is happening. In League of Legends, we're going to start from quarterfinals of Worlds. We had RNG versus EDG. EDG won. Gen.G versus C9. Gen.G won. T1 versus Hen 1 Life. T1 won. Damwon Gaming versus Mad Lions. Mad Lion won. In semifinals, it was EDG versus Gen.G. EDG won. In the bottom bracket, it was T1 versus Damwon. Damwon won. And in the finals, it was EDG versus Damwon Kia, and EDG won. So congratulations, EDG, for being the 2021 League of Legends World Champions. Yes, overall, my thoughts on the tournament. I didn't watch a single game. Probably the best thing that came out of this was the league show Arcane. I think this format is very, very bad, where we have both the Korean teams in the same bracket, in the lower bracket, and they face off each other, or both of the two like big Korean teams, and it was very, very just uneventful to watch. But the roster moves in the offseason have been crazy, at least in NA. So some of the moves that we've had before, we know that Tenacity is going for the top lane in 100 Thieves. The rest of it seems to be saying the same. For Cloud9, Fudge is moving to the mid lane. Summit is coming in for top. Then we have Berserker and Bot. Sven is going to Academy, apparently. We have Isles and Wholesome in support. For COG, Jenkins is going top. Contracts is going jungle. Palafox in middle. Lugger and Bot, and Poming in support, and then they have a new coach being Thick Card. For Dignitas, we have Fake Gods still staying top. River in jungle. Their mid is unannounced at the moment. Neo and Bot. Biofrost in support. And Electron as the new head coach. For Evil Geniuses, Impact is staying top. Inspired is going to the jungle. Jojo Pian is coming middle. Danny is still bot. Ignar is sharing a support spot with Vulcan. For FlyQuest, their top and jungle are staying the same. Toishilo, I have no clue how to pronounce this dude's name, is going to middle. Johnson is going bot, and Afromu is now the support for FlyQuest. For Golden Guardians, they cut Solo, Iconic, and Pride Stalker are going to be in the jungle, and Lost is going to be going in the bot lane with Stixay, and then Olay is also coming back to NA as support. For Immortals, we have the top and jungle staying the same, with Power of Evil and Wild Turtle being both mid and bottom. For Team Liquid, we have Whippo coming in top, Centurion in the jungle, Bjergsen now in the mid lane along with Jensen, though I think they're going to be playing Bjergsen. Hansama as bot lane and tactical, and JJ Stills with a new head coach being Gilahodo. For TSM is staying the same. Middle is yet to be decided. They are getting tactical for a new bot laner, and then we have yet to see who Sword Art or Bjergsen is officially. So a lot of big roster moves for here in NA. Europe also has some roster changes as well. I don't want to go over all of them, but you can go on lolfandom.com wiki/roster swaps to see all the roster changes, as you can see in the VOD in the video on our YouTube channel. For Valorant, all right, so Valorant, the championship tournament starts December 1st, which will be in a couple days. It will be in Berlin, Germany. Group A will have Ascent and KDU Stars playing first, and then Envy versus X10 Crit. In Group B, we will have Kuro Esports versus Team Liquid, and Sentinels versus Furia. In Group C, we have Gambit versus Team Secret, and Team Vikings versus Crazy Raccoon. In Group D, we will have Vision Strikers versus Full Sense, and Fnatic versus Cloud9 Blue. Then we'll have to see. This tournament is looking up to be really cool. The skins they released for the game are actually really cool as well, if you haven't seen those out already. But the full teams that are participating: Gambit, Esports, Ascent, Fnatic, Sentinels, Envy, Team Vikings, Kelly Stars, Vision Strikers, Crazy Raccoon, X10's Crit, Team Secret, Kuro Esports, Team Liquid, C9 Blue, Fury, and Full Sense are all the teams that are participating in the tournament. With further ado, that's going to conclude this week's podcast episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Look forward to the next couple episodes, as they are going to be the final for this season. If you haven't already, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps me out. Also, check out all of our archived podcast shows that's season 1 to current on our YouTube channel. We also have our Spotify and our iTunes and our Google Podcasts, brain fart there, if you want to listen to our shows there, and also on SoundCloud. Check out our website for articles of game and game design, as well as our blog for my capstone game, Running Gun, where you can download the beta now and play it and check it out, and also get to see my work process of making. With that all out of the way, that's going to conclude this week's show. This has been your host, Salty Waffles, signing off, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful climb.